they are destabilizing society by breaking barriers in our society, by sexualizing children. And there are some people who are caught up in this, but they know that what's going on is cult action.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Rita. So we have got to talk about this thing I went to this past weekend. I went to a pride picnic this weekend in a small town in Wisconsin, and I cannot wait to tell you all of what I saw. I did try to get as much footage as I could at this event, and I even interviewed somebody, but because I clearly need more practice at this, I cut off like the 90% of the interview and only got like a little clip, but I learned a lot at this event, and I'm glad I attended. So first I'll start off with when we parked, right in front of us were about 15 or so guys, I guess. You know, at first I thought it was Antifa because they were black clad and they had masks, whatever, and khaki pants, and they were carrying like Nazi flags, black and white Nazi flags. Before we get to the event, as we're walking, we noticed something very peculiar. They were taking pictures on the way to the event as they were marching. So we get to the event and the Nazis are chanting right outside of the event. Now, this was not a paid thing, this picnic, so they very well could have gone in, but they did not. So they stood out front and they chanted.
No, I know you guys don't, because you've been very respectful up to this point to me, because I've been out here for hours, and you guys have been very respectful. When I ask you to make room,
from what I could tell, these must be some new school Nazis, because I did not hear anything about black people. I did not hear anything about Jewish people as per the usual. I did not hear one N-word. I didn't hear anything. Not to mention, they were there for maybe, half hour, 45 minutes or so. They did their little chant over and over again about pedophiles. And while they were doing all of that, they were doing all their, their salutes. And the press was there taking tons and tons of photos. And then after all the photos, now all the chanting was done after about 40 minutes, they kind of just marched off. So, of course, as they marched off, they did a few salutes. And of course, the press was right in front of them. And once the pictures were done, they kind of just carried on off. So, very suspicious group of Nazis there at this event.
That's suspicious.
I just wanted to point out that when we see these things in the media about neo-Nazis and all this other things that are going on, be very wary of the fact that this could be propaganda and that it could be a huge setup. So we decided to go inside of the event, and I saw some disturbing things like people who claim to be pastors with booths set up, talking about love is love, God is love, all this stuff, and these people will never define what God's love is as it pertains to the Bible. You say love is love, but that's not a real definition. That doesn't make any sense. Shoes are shoes. Hair is hair. Well, what does that mean? That doesn't tell me anything about the biological makeup of hair or the components of the shoe. Shoes, it's just saying something. Now, this was supposed to be a family picnic, right? It was marketed or advertised as the Pride Family Picnic. And it was really targeted at children. So of course, what you also saw was a lot of people picketing. One thing I thought was very telling is that for a family picnic that's targeted towards families with children, the reason I say it was targeted towards children is because they had like drag queen story hour on their flyer, and they had like a drag show and a kids dance off or a dance party. So it was very much targeted at children. But the one thing that we didn't see we did not see a whole lot of kid-friendly things. Like you would expect to see a bouncy castle. You would expect to see clowns making animal balloons. You would expect to see a petting zoo. You know, all of these things for children, games. None of those things were actually there. We didn't stay the whole day. We were there in the afternoon and in the morning until mid-afternoon, but the event was only until 6 o'clock. So, but the whole time we were there, and there was one food truck. So it wasn't even like the flyer was saying, oh, it's going to be all these vendors, it's going to be food trucks, but none of that actually happened. So what was there? There was one booth there for face painting and makeup. That was it. Every other booth was just handing out flyers. So this really wasn't a kid-friendly event. This is more of an evangelistic outreach event. There were, yes, drag queens there.
So if you hear any noise at all, even if it sounds like it's hate, really, I just hear love because I love attention.
And there was also an underage boy there.
Oh, but they love me.
Not only did we see that, but again, more pastors affirming all of this stuff. Now, I could not hold back. I had to call out one of the pastors because, yes, this event, all of these things with the children, egregious, but for a quote unquote pastor to be there affirming these things, and instead of telling people the truth, what they need to hear, he is leading people astray. As Christians, we are called to call these people out. They are particularly more egregious. You are in complete violation of the Bible. You are a wolf in sheep's clothing. The police were escorting people out of the event who had signs. It was a public park, but apparently you couldn't stand inside the event with a sign. If you had a sign that you were going to wave, you had to go outside of the fence. So people were escorted out. I followed some of the people out to, try to see what happened. And so there was a lot of back and forth with the police.
Because if I were to do that with promises of face painting and storybooks in my underwear, I would be arrested, sir. And I can tell you know what I'm saying. I'm not trying to be that. I know you know some of this is wrong. This was directly targeted at children.
And so 4 people came with their signs to protest, a silent protest, and they kind of lined up along the fence, and one said hands off our babies with like trans colors, and another one said, so it was all these trans or pro-trans signs. And so I was trying to have a conversation with them. There was a guy behind me who was yelling obscenities.
You're not trans, you're just ugly with no personality.
Oh, well, that's not nice.
You're unfucked.
Oh, that's not nice. That's not nice. And the reason I bring this up is because what I observed, there were people walking around with signs saying trans people or trans are humans. And so it got me thinking about this idea that so much has been conflated. This idea of being what it means to be a person and what it means to be acting out certain behaviors that somebody might not like have been conflated. I saw signs that says trans kids are human, trans are human. Do you think that people don't think you're human? Or that...
Probably, I don't know.
No, I mean, because I hear that argument a lot, and I'm just curious.
I mean, I'm sure those Nazis who just walked through here think that trans people aren't human.
Yeah. As a Christian, I believe that everyone was created in the image of God, and that people are human. Humans are humans. Even if they do things that we detest, they are still human. What is the goal with when we speak out against this movement? What are we trying to achieve? The goal should be, okay, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about why you believe what you believe. Because what I found out is that a lot of these people think that The reason they say bigots, Nazis, and all this stuff is because the media has conflated a lot of these ideas. And now these people think that the people who disagree with them don't even believe that they are human, deserving of a voice or anything else. Now, I'm not giving a pass to certain behaviors that we see, but what I am saying is it is incumbent upon us to have these conversations with these people, because these guys who are yelling behind me didn't have an opportunity to have the conversations that the conversation I ended up having with this gentleman. Turns out he said he had never been to a drag show. Now, as we're talking, there's a show going on behind his back, so maybe he should have been there instead of talking to me so he could actually see what goes on. But I had to explain to him that these shows now are very sexualized. So we started talking about the sexualization of children just in the broader society. And we agreed on that. He said that he thought it was a terrible idea to sexualize children. I said, everybody's not like this guy who's yelling. Most people just feel like there are kids who are here who probably don't want to be here, who are being forced to be here, and their parents are telling them they have to like it. And he thought about it and he thought, yeah, that's probably really true. So we made some headway with this guy, which I thought was great. I asked the guy, why does the drag queen have to have on a bathing suit? Although at this one, they did have like a little skirt flap thing. But my question is, why do they always have to be dressed seductively? Why do they have to look like monsters too? Half-dressed, naked, scary monsters. Why can't they dress modestly and read to the kids? Why does it have to be a naked prance around the stage? I explained this to the guy. So I think that he did not even really realize what he was protesting. He identifies as queer, non-binary, all these things he told me. But this is a political stance for him. He explained that basically he feels like he's standing with the underdog. And that's why he's taking on all these titles. Because I asked him, well, why do you need labels? Obviously, you're still a man who's attracted to women. And you have what would be considered what looks to be like a nuclear family situation. But he felt like he was on the side of those who are oppressed. He just took on the persona in order to be a rebel. So at the end of it, we had a good conversation. His guard was down. I thought it was pretty productive. And I think when we speak out and when we protest and when we show up at parent-teacher conferences and all of these things, I think our goal should be to have conversations, get to the root of what's happening, except for the people who are perverted. A lot of these people just think that they're fighting for the underdog in this whole movement. If we really want to start to see a shift, I think we really are going to have to start being willing to engage in conversations with these people who seem to be unreachable. I'm not saying you're going to agree with everything, but I think that we can come to some happy medium. When I finished talking to the guy, by the end of it, we had agreed on one thing, that children should not be sexualized and that we should not make it easy for predators in any circumstance to access our children. He was even talking about how there's mass surveillance happening. And so then we got on the topic of how the government is trying to separate us all. And all I'm saying is less yelling and name calling and more actual conversations in person and not a gotcha conversation. I think that's the only way we're going to see the tides turn. All in all, it was an interesting experience to say the least. I'm glad I went. Inappropriate for children. Shouldn't be a children's event. This was an adult only event. I don't think anybody would care, but because it looked more like an evangelistic event, it's marketed toward children, makes it seem like it was a grooming, luring tactic. This is what the whole protest is about. Let me know what you think. Have you attended any Pride events in your area? Until next time, guys, God bless. Ciao.